home, you know, he saw psychics quite a bit, so his neighbor thought it was appropriate to invite other psychics here to the home where he was murdered. As you can see behind me right now, they are doing a reading, and the information that they have gathered and will gather has been handed over to authorities to help solve this case.
My mom and I have gone to psychics for years now, and she had contacted me and said that there was a reading up in Indiana. Would I like to go? And so I agreed because she wanted to go. She's disabled, so I took her up there with me. And going in there thinking I'm going to get a reading, you know, like something for me. But when we got involved, it was only a few minutes into the reading that John came through, and she was able to see that we had somebody close to us, like a neighbor or a family member who had passed, but it brought great grief to our family. And then she was able to tell that my kids were actually the ones who found him, and it just started to go from there, like to unfold from there. They felt like it was somebody in law enforcement, and that they would be moving, like their job would be moving or they would be transferred. That it would be there was actually supposedly 3 people that were in the house, 2 of which were brothers or related somehow in the way of like work or what have you. And so I decided, you know what, I can't let this go. I think we should maybe have him come down if it would be agreeable to his family. Bring them down here and let them come in the house and see what kind of breeding they get from there, because if his spirit is still here, then maybe we could get some answers.
Spirit brought in a white red-haired colored man, described his eyes, and kept getting law enforcement. And so, and that session probably went on for about 45 minutes, which was more, and she invited us down to the house to do a walkthrough, which my sister and I did. And at that time, we were with Bob Bell and Dave and Janelle, who were from the local police department, and we gave them a lot of information that we felt that John's spirit was bringing in, that there is a couple more people involved in this, and also that there was something to do with a cover-up with law enforcement, that it was going to keep getting shifting around. The papers weren't going to get looked at. And my sister had said,
we had like a 3-hour meeting in that room over there, and it was Bob Bell who had asked me, you know, working on this case, do you think it'll get solved? And I asked my sister, who's, you know, do I tell him the truth or do I, you know, pat it? And she said, just tell him what you feel. And I felt it would not happen on his watch. I felt that it was a good old boys club. And I said, and there's other people who were present I didn't get a good feel with, and I said, you know, there's a lot of people who owe favors to or just won't volunteer any information. And I said it won't happen here.
and respect law enforcement. I mean, everybody respects law enforcement, and the thought of anyone like that having anything to do with a crime is unthinkable. And so when it was mentioned that law enforcement, they would never believe law enforcement. The one guy turned to me, I think it was Dave, and he said, well, probably somebody in the Navy or military. Her husband happens to be in the, or ex-serviceman, and they were still aiming towards her. And I think that's why John came in. I mean, we just lead in the direction. I mean, I only go what spirit brings us, but, you know, by sure, you have to have DNA, and you have to have, you know, the criminal lab and all that, but John also went to psychics. I didn't know this until recently, and so that's probably why he came in and wanted to solve her family also not to be blamed. And they went through a lot of grief. You're aware of that, right?
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. Didn't you know?
Basically, when I was coming
He
in,
was a suspect.
got her husband like off the hook because other things came in.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they were just gearing towards him and his guy next door.
And her
you know,
son.
how typical, and it wasn't. Other things came out during the meeting too when we were doing that. We had got some items that I guess the person who did this did, and I had seen someone with like the old Vietnam medals, the war medals on there, and she had picked up that they also had either a cross or Italian horn, and the person to my left was a house detective. Who was that to the left?
I think so.
Yeah, and he goes, you mean like this? I almost want
Then
to
he
run
said
out the
that,
door.
Melissa, he said, you mean like this, it's to our,
Whoever
was it
did it.
Indiana? Wasn't he said it was like to Indiana or Western PA? I can't remember what he said. Indiana.
I think he was from Indiana, like
He said-
originally, because he was a detective.
And he said this was the only,
The Brotherhood of Indiana or
Yeah.
something.
that we have these tags.
And yeah, and Spirit brought that information to
Out
my
the door.
sister, and we went,
Symbolism, there's certain symbolisms you'll see and then you'll interpret. But when we came in here with Melissa, I've never done a crime scene where I've been in the same state, because it's, circumstantial evidence, it's always better to be elsewhere, so they don't come back and say, where were you? So this was actually the first coming into a house that had such pain and drama and just horrific things that happened. And you never know, how it was going to be interpreted. You do feel, when we came in here, I could feel what had happened. I felt the pain. I felt him fighting for his life, and I felt him crossing over. And I also had, through like big classes, how to learn how to channel interpret, I had felt actually who was present before he crossed over. And I did feel a male, I did feel a female, and possibly somebody watching out on the door, like, what the neighbor's doing, can someone hear what's going on. As far as him suffering, I would say probably a lot, because you're fighting for your life. And there, you're standing right where where it
Yes.
happened is right here, in partial here, but this is where he had bled to death, and her child had confirmed while I was reading. I said, I described how he was facing and how I felt. There was a straight cut and then a jagged cut, like the person had like broken out of rage and had restarted, okay? And then she had reminded me what I said, how all the points through here, how someone had just went wild with anger, lots of points. Remember what you had told me?
and then she could feel the blood pooling around her. That was such, like, the loss of blood was probably what killed him before he had passed
Bleeding
on.
to death.
Let me
just
ask you,
trying to-
show us